Well, retraining and digital upskilling of the workforce has been front and centre in this week's federal budget. $550 million has been pledged for skills and training, as well as more than $1 billion to reduce the cost to small businesses of going digital. So what does this mean for small business? Joining me now live is Patrick Kidd, the CEO of Digital Skills Organisation. Patrick, great to see you. Appreciate your time this afternoon. Firstly, how far do you think this funding will go?
Thanks very much indeed for having me on the programme today, and thank you for the question. It's super important, isn't it, in terms of starting to really get after this significant challenge that we have, which is about how are we going to upskill our nation from a digital perspective. There are 1.4 million small businesses out there, sole traders. 1 in 5 of them desperately need to start to pick up their own digital skills as we go forward. So it's a really important part of actually starting to shift the dial as we try and get after this big problem. But there's lots more that needs to be done, but this is a great start.
How can small business access this level of financial support then for upskilling, and where do they find the training?
So the details obviously going to have to work their way through. I think it's a really good point to be talked about in terms of how do you actually ease the way in which small businesses can access the training that's available to them. We've really got to be able to do things here that encourage them as small business owners to upskill themselves, but also to ensure that the people that they are employing have got the necessary skills. And if you think about businesses now across Australia, there are 3.7 million businesses. Every single one of them is now a digital business. Every single one of them needs to have employees who've got the right digital skills. And really the challenge for us as a nation now is to make sure that we uplift the skills of everybody so that they can interact in this digital world. Digital skills are now as important as reading and writing, and we've really got to have due focus on that, which is about encouraging learners, making sure the training system is sufficiently adaptable and agile, but also making sure that the employers themselves know what the opportunities are that they're missing when they don't actually invest in this type of training.
Well, speaking of that, the Digital Skills Organisation has launched a discussion paper on this matter. What are you calling for?
So when we talk about digital skills, it's super important that we start to align ourselves firstly upon what we're really referring to and what the messages are that we have to get to. So we've got to have really, first and foremost, a sort of a language that brings us all together so that we're all saying the same things at the same time. We call and call out the need for what we call digital literacy. So that's literacy for every single person across the nation. But we've also then got to think about the specialist technology entry-level people that we need to have as we start to build the capability and capacity of the nation as a whole. So we have to sort of draw out those two distinctions. So we need a simple language that brings us together. We need simple mechanisms that ensure that we understand where we need to be in terms of what we're trying to train to. So we call out what we call digital skills standards, and let's be clear about what they are, because it gives people absolute clarity about where they need to be aiming for, where do employers need to get to. And then the third component that we talk about is trying to make sure that we've actually got a training system that is sufficiently agile, that can get after this at scale, and it can also recognise that people learn in very different ways. So we want to have a much more flexible system. We want to make it easy for people to engage with it, and we've absolutely got to start to get after the numbers. So we've got to be really clear about what our strategy is, what the plans are to do it, and absolutely get after it.
And what sort of training is available at the moment, and why does that need to be expanded?
So we learn our digital skills anywhere and everywhere. So in schools, in universities, actually, many of us learn sort of automatically on our own without any formal training at all. So what we really need to do now is to sort of start to be clear as to what are the standards that we need to get to with that training, so that we're clear as to what the outcomes are that go with it. So I think what we need to have now is a recognition of where we're trying to get to. So absolute clarity about what literacy means, absolute clarity about sort of what those other skills are that are important from a technical side within the economy. And then the training providers are able to get after those particular standards. So there's clarity, there's alignment of purpose, and a real sort of drive to make sure that we're sort of generating the numbers with the throughput that's required and operating at the speed that we need to really get the system moving in the way that it requires.
How big is the skills gap in Australia, do you think?
So we break it out into two. We talk about the need for everybody to have digital skills, and that literally refers to every single person here. So currently, it's around 90% of businesses use people with digital skills. That's going to be 100% over the next sort of 4 or 5 years. So it's the digital skills for each and every one of us as we sit and operate within our own particular areas. So that's sort of one component. And then the other part of it then is people with the right technical skills to be technical professionals. And in there, we need 60,000 people a year more than we currently provide. The training system only actually delivers 10,000 people a year who are trained. So we've got a big gap between what's being trained and the actual demand in business. So it's quite a big gap. We need to have initiatives like this to start to move the dial forward. We need to be clear about where we're trying to get to, where the priorities are, and obviously make sure that we're then really communicating with a really clear voice about where employers need to be and where the learners need to be as we go forwards.
Yeah, such an important topic in this ever-evolving world. Patrick Kidd, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.